The morning sun had just begun its lazy climb over the rooftops of Cedar Hollow, casting long shadows across my carefully tended garden. The dew-kissed petals of my marigolds glistened like tiny jewels, their vibrant orange hues defying the dull monotony of my beige siding. It was a serene beginning to what I hoped would be another uneventful day. Little did I know, the peace was about to be shattered by the neighborhood's self-appointed overseer, Karen. Karen's approach was always heralded by the sharp click of her sensible heels against the pavement, a sound that echoed with an air of relentless purpose. I could almost feel the cool, judgmental breeze she carried with her as she marched up my driveway. Her expression was one of determined disapproval, a familiar arrangement of pinched lips and furrowed brows that seemed permanently etched into her features. The grass didn't even have time to sway in response to the breeze before she began her inquisition. Her words were clipped, her tone accusing. She had seen cars, she claimed, too many for a casual gathering. A suspicious number, she concluded, for a single residence. Her eyes narrowed, as if searching for cracks in the facade of my modest home that might reveal a clandestine enterprise. I nodded along, maintaining a placid expression that seemed to frustrate her more than a protest ever could. Inside, my mind was a flurry of thoughts, as I recalled the gaggle of friends who had recently visited for our monthly book club, their laughter still echoing in my memory like a pleasant refrain. Not a business meeting, but a gathering of kindred spirits seeking solace in stories and shared tea. Karen's accusations were not new. She had a penchant for inventing problems where none existed, her imagination a cauldron of dramatic conspiracies simmering just beneath the surface. She reveled in her role, brandishing HOA bylaws like a medieval knight would a sword ready to strike down any perceived transgression. Still, I chose peace. A firm nod, a vague promise to look into her concerns, and she was off again, the click of her heels fading into the distance. Her departure left behind an invisible residue of tension, one that clung to the air like a stubborn fog. As I surveyed the quiet street, the early morning light now casting a warm glow over everything, I considered my options. I could let this pass, allowing her accusations to slip into the oblivion of inconsequence. Or I could do something more, something that danced on the edges of irony and justice. The idea came to me like a whisper on the wind, faint but insistent. An inspection. Yes, a thorough zoning inspection. The HOA had its rules, and if Karen wanted to wield them, perhaps it was time to test their mettle. A plan began to form, slow but steady like the first strokes of a master painter's brush on a blank canvas. It was more than retaliation. It was a statement, a quiet rebellion wrapped in the guise of compliance. As the sun continued its ascent, I felt a curious mix of resolve and excitement unfurl within me. The day stretched ahead, full of possibilities, and I turned back to my garden, where the marigolds stood defiantly bright against the morning. They were resilient, undeterred by the whims of weather or the interference of passers-by. Perhaps they were the embodiment of what I aspired to be in the face of Karen's relentless scrutiny, unyielding, steadfast, and quietly magnificent. The morning air was crisp, the kind that tickled your lungs with each inhale. It was the kind of day that could have been peaceful, had it not been for Karen's relentless presence hovering like a looming storm cloud. The HOA bulletin board, usually an unassuming fixture by the mailbox cluster, had sprouted with new notices overnight. More rules, more restrictions. It was as if Karen's mission in life was to keep the neighborhood tangled in her bureaucratic web. Among the new postings were meticulously typed lists of violations, each one a monument to her obsession with order. No decorative flags too colorful, no garden gnomes too whimsical, no cars parked an inch out of line. It seemed she had taken my home business accusation as an offense against the very fabric of our community, and her retaliation was swift and biting. People muttered as they read the notices, their eyes darting around, seeking whom to blame for this sudden onslaught of scrutiny. Whispers curled through the air like smoke, carrying Karen's name. Some nodded along, fearful of reprisal, while others cast furtive glances at their homes, wondering who among them would be caught next in her snare. But I listened, quietly absorbing the murmurs and rustling papers like leaves in a breeze. Each added rule was a declaration, a reminder that power in this neighborhood wore a pastel cardigan and drove a sensible sedan. I could feel the tension creeping through the streets, an unseen force winding tighter with each passing day. Neighborly smiles grew thinner, strained under the weight of Karen's reign. My own mailbox held an envelope with a fresh citation. My trash bins, apparently, had been placed half a foot outside the designated area on collection day, an offense punishable by fine, naturally. Inside, I let the paper lay on the kitchen counter, a silent testament to the pettiness that had invaded my life. I sipped my coffee, letting the bitterness coat my tongue. It was a small rebellion to not correct the bins, to let the fine linger unpaid. Karen had sparked something within me. Not anger, not exactly. More like a quiet resolve. I was not one for open confrontation, but there were subtler weapons. Bureaucracy could cut both ways, after all. The whispers continued, a chorus of dissent slowly building in the aftermath of her decrees. I observed, a spectator to my own unfolding drama, as Karen's insatiable need for control began to fuel the fire of her undoing. She had overplayed her hand, and the neighborhood was growing wise to her game. And so, I began my own. With every citation, every gossiping tongue, I documented, collected, and prepared. The zoning inspections she had unwittingly set into motion would soon reveal their own surprises. The irony was sweet, and I savored it quietly. Karen had inadvertently started a war of attrition, and I was content to dig in for the long haul. After all, even the mightiest oak can fall when the roots rot below. The morning sun filtered through my curtains, thin, prying fingers of light that seemed to echo the invasive scrutiny of my neighbors. Karen's accusation had spread like wildfire, leaving trails of embers that smoldered in every corner of the neighborhood. Accused of running a business from my home, as if my late nights of writing could be mistaken for anything but a personal pursuit. It was ludicrous, but the air was thick with suspicion and self-righteousness, a heady mix that left a bitter taste in the back of my throat. Karen, with her hawk-like gaze and clipped speech, had planted the seed of doubt. The HOA, eager to prove their worth, latched onto it with the fervor of dogs on a fox hunt. I hadn't thought much of it at first. How could they possibly find evidence of what didn't exist? But their persistence was unnerving, like a constant hum just beneath the surface of daily life, impossible to ignore. I began documenting everything. Every letter, every visit, each raised eyebrow and hushed conversation. My journal became a ledger of grievances, a careful record that betrayed nothing of the storm within. The irony of it all amused me. Their zeal for rules and regulations was about to become my greatest ally. In the quiet moments, I crafted a plan. Subtle, like the whisper of an idea before dawn. Zoning inspections, a part of their own bylaws, carefully positioned as both a solution and an enigma. It was a masterstroke, the kind that slipped through the cracks of their assumptions and landed with the precision of a chess player moving a decisive bishop. Days passed with the slow grace of a drawn-out waltz. I watched Karen from afar, her movements sharp and precise like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. Her certainty was her downfall. She never imagined I'd fight back using the very structures she adored. On a crisp morning, I invited the zoning officials, professionals with sharp eyes and sharper wits, brought in under the guise of verifying compliance. They moved through the neighborhood, clipboards in hand, their presence a silent rebuke to the HOA's overreach. I made sure every inspection was thorough, leaving no stone unturned, no corner unchecked. As the weeks unfolded, the neighborhood buzzed with the hum of transformation. Karen's house, with its expansive deck and garden sculptures, came under scrutiny. Ironic how the chains she forged for me now wrapped around her own wrists. The irony was as sweet as summer honey. The findings were as expected. Minor infractions here and there, the kind that were overlooked in friendships but magnified under the cold lens of bureaucracy. The HOA's funds, already stretched thin, groaned under the weight of compliance costs, and whispers of discontent began to circulate among the residents. Karen's composure started to fray, little by little, her steps less assured, her voice missing the previous edge. The mighty had fallen, not with a bang, but a series of quiet, inexorable slips. In the end, it was not about winning or losing. It was the subtle satisfaction of knowing that justice could wear the guise of irony, that the quiet power of patience and documentation could unravel even the tightest of knots. The neighborhood settled back into its rhythm, like a pond after a stone has sunk to the bottom, leaving only ripples in its wake. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the mahogany desk in my study, a room I had meticulously arranged over the years, a sanctuary of calm in the chaos Karen seemed to love stirring. My fingers traced the embossed lines of the legal documents spread before me, each page a silent testament to the slow, deliberate gears of bureaucracy I had set in motion. Karen's accusations were relentless. Her eyes, sharp like a hawk's, always seemed to track every package delivered to my door, every visitor pulling into my driveway. She clung to her imagined offenses with a tenacity that would have been admirable in any other context. But this was my home, and her obsession with my supposed transgressions had driven me to action. The zoning laws of our neighborhood were labyrinthine, every clause and subclause a potential minefield for those unprepared to navigate their intricacies. But I had delved into them with the same quiet determination Karen had used to scrutinize my every move. The irony was not lost on me. She had accused me of running a business from home, and now it was her beloved HOA that would feel the weight of regulatory scrutiny. I had contacted the city planning office, a cordial conversation that belied the significance of my request. A formal zoning inspection, thorough and unyielding, was now scheduled, and Karen's carefully cultivated world would soon endure the intrusion she had so eagerly wished upon me. The image of her face, twisted in confusion and outrage, was a satisfying thought. But it was not revenge I sought, merely equilibrium. The days slipped by with a curious calm. I moved through my routines with a lightness that had eluded me since the accusations began. The garden seemed greener, the air crisper, as if nature herself was conspiring to reward my patience. Karen, oblivious to what was coming, continued her neighborhood patrols, clipboard in hand. Then the day arrived. The inspectors, a fleet of suits armed with clipboards and inscrutable expressions, descended upon the HOA's domain with the precision of a well-rehearsed ballet. They moved from one meticulously manicured lawn to the next, peeling back layers of compliance and oversight. It was a performance meant to intimidate, but also to reveal truths hidden beneath the surface of orderly suburban life. I watched from a distance, my presence unnoticed amidst the commotion. The irony, like a well-aged wine, was rich on my tongue. Karen, caught in the crosshairs of her own machinations, flitted anxiously between the inspectors and her fellow board members, her composure fraying at the edges. Her voice carried on the breeze, a sound of forced civility wrapped around a core of panic. The inspection lasted hours, each minute an eternity for Karen. The outcome, I would learn later, was a litany of minor infractions, each one a small testament to the folly of seeking perfection in an imperfect world. The HOA, Karen's fortress, bore the brunt of bureaucratic displeasure, fines levied in proportion to their hubris. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues over the now quiet street, I felt a sense of closure. Karen, defeated but still defiant, would no doubt rally for another skirmish, another imagined slight to rally against. But for now, peace had returned, a fragile truce in the unending war of wills. I returned to my study, the room aglow with the soft light of evening. The shadows stretched and pooled, a gentle reminder of the day's events. I sat down, the leather chair creaking softly as I leaned back, a contented sigh escaping my lips. In the dance of shadows and light, I found solace, the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best retribution is simply allowing the weight of one's own actions to bear down upon them. The sun peeked over the horizon, golden rays filtering through the lattice of oak branches, casting a delicate lace of shadows on the pavement. The morning was quiet, save for the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath my feet as I walked to the mailbox. The air was cool, crisp, with the promise of change, and the neighborhood felt different somehow, as if holding its breath. The zoning inspection had been thorough, meticulous even, and the findings were clear. No violations, no businesses covertly operating, just the usual comings and goings of life. The board had to eat their words, the bitter taste of defeat settling in their mouths as they read the inspector's report. Vindication has a sweetness all its own. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, had not taken the news gracefully. Her initial barrage of emails and letters had slowed to a trickle, then stopped altogether. Her reign of rigid rules and overzealous enforcement was waning, and I wondered if she knew it too. Perhaps she saw the change in the eyes of the neighbors, the quiet nods of understanding, the soft whispers of unity that she could no longer control. The HOA meeting loomed on the horizon, a gathering that promised more than the usual droning discussions. There was an anticipation in the air, a silent agreement among the community to address the disruption Karen had sown. I arrived early, the hall echoing my footsteps, as I settled into a chair towards the back, content to observe the unfolding drama. The room filled slowly, neighbors greeting one another with nods and hushed conversations. Karen entered last, her presence a cold wind that swept through the room. She carried herself with a brittle confidence, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, a crack in the armor. The board convened, their expressions a mix of weariness and resolve. The meeting began, the usual agenda items ticking by like the hands of a clock. And then, the moment arrived, the point on the agenda that everyone had been waiting for. The chairperson cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Karen. The silence was tangible, every eye trained on her. It was a moment suspended in time, the collective weight of the community bearing down on her shoulders. For once, she had no ready retort, no defense lined up like soldiers at the ready. Instead, she shifted uncomfortably, her bravado slipping like sand through fingers. In that silence, I found a strange satisfaction, not from her discomfort, but from the realization that the neighborhood had found its voice. It was as if a spell had been broken, Karen's influence waning like the last light of dusk. The board voted to amend the bylaws, safeguarding against such manipulations in the future. The meeting concluded, the atmosphere lighter, buoyed by a newfound sense of camaraderie. As the neighbors dispersed, I lingered, watching as Karen gathered her things slowly, deliberately. Our eyes met briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between us. There was no need for words. She knew, and I knew. Walking home, the autumn breeze ruffled the leaves, their rustling a soft, symphonic farewell to the old order. The neighborhood was settling into its new rhythm, a harmony restored by the very person she had sought to undo. Irony, sometimes, is the most poetic form of justice. In the end, it was not about revenge, it was about balance, about reclaiming the quiet corner of the world we called home. As I passed through the gate to my yard, I heard the faint, melodic laughter of children playing nearby. It was the sound of peace, of a community healing, and it was enough.